Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Jentry Chau versus the Underworld. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I only watched the teaser trailer for this. I didn't watch the full trailer, so I got a vibe and feel of what the story was kind of generally about. So I went into this not knowing a lot. So a lot of things surprised me. I think in my head, I kind of just assumed that Jentry was going to start off this series knowing everything. And it seems like she's never fully taken a step into the supernatural world, but she kind of has. Because like when she goes back home, it's like, oh, like she's just familiar. She's okay with like the ghosts that exist in her house, but she's never been able to see them. Because we find out she had fire powers as a kid when she was like 8, maybe even younger, but they've been sealed away because of trauma, which we'll get to later. So she's kind of lived her life as a normal teenager, because I guess I was kind of expecting her just to have a regular, like, she's already been a part of this world and is just picking up in the middle of that story, not knowing like, oh, because it's not really fully an origin story. You get what I'm saying? Like, I thought she was just gonna be like a regular teen that gains powers or something like that. Because when I saw like the teaser for the show, and I said this somewhere else, the immediate thing that came to my mind was it kind of gave me Danny Phantom vibes. I think it's because like she's dealing with like supernatural stuff, kind of more in it's demons and stuff, but there's also like I think probably ghosts and stuff are involved. But actually watching this episode too, it made me think about Jake Long, American Dragon, which I really liked that show when I was a kid, but I have not thought about that show in so long, and that just like sparked that in my brain. So especially because of the mysticism side of things. But yeah, Gentry was in Korea, but the moment like this shape-shifting demon comes to find her, his name is Ed, which I love the pop cultural reference of like, oh yeah, named after like Edward Cullen from Twilight, being like, oh yeah, one of the biggest selling books of fiction or whatever. He's like, read a book or whatever. It's like, I mean, I guess because it's like that's beyond her generation or something like that, because obviously Twilight predates her because she's only 16, and I'm assuming it's set relatively present day, like 2020 something. So it's like whether it's like 2023 while the show was probably being made, or whether it actually is set in 2024, whatever the case may be. But yeah, like she gets attacked by this guy and she's fighting. She summons her powers, but she doesn't have full control of them. And luckily, her grandma, her Gugu, shows up and like puts a talisman on him to paralyze him. And now they have to go back to Texas, where she lived up until she was 8 years old. Now, this is the thing I was kind of really surprised by. I wasn't expecting this to be part of her story. Is she has psychological trauma because when she was 8 years old, she kind of burned like a good chunk of the town down. And she's like, right, like it's, because her grandma's like, I know you probably have like a lot of bad memories, but she's like, come on, it's been 8 years. No one remembers. And it's like, yeah, like apparently we find out that it's become a bit of a tourist trap for this town. What's the town called? Like Folk or something like that, River Fork, something like that. And yeah, it's kind of like sad, like to have almost like this commercialization of your trauma. We don't get into what caused it, but I'm assuming because we find out her parents died, I'm assuming her mom and dad died, and like she was an 8-year-old girl that was scared and confused, and her powers just went out of control, and she burned down a lot of the town. And luckily no one in town knows it was her. They have all these images of like, ooh, the demon girl did it, so no one knows she did it. But it's still kind of that thing of, yeah, she has this trauma connected with her powers, which is going to be obviously a part of her arc as the series progresses, of trying to get past that trauma to fully control back, like take back her power in a lot of ways, because it's like, yeah, her power has become like this kind of boogeyman that's kind of like haunted her, especially because like she got to be in Korea, build a new life for herself, and now she has to come back and face the past in this way. Really, initially it was like she came back here to kill. She only came back to kill Mr. Chang, who is the king of the Mogwai or something like that. I guess kind of like a demon king of sorts. And her grandma like wanted to try and do this on her own, but it's like, yeah, she made a deal with him. It's like, cool, I have until like my granddaughter turns 16, and the moment she does, you can you can take her soul. So it seems like Gentry's this special one because it's like he wants to devour her soul because her soul is tied to her powers, and with her added bonus, I beyond like that, like I wonder, does her parents' death have anything to do with that? Like, obviously, chosen child story. There's been plenty of them. Obviously, the first one that just pop culture wise, the one that even though I'm not a Harry Potter fan, Harry Potter's like the thing that comes to my mind. So I'm sure we'll dive into it more as the season progresses about like what happened to her parents, because it's like, was her mom special too, and he couldn't get her, so the only person he could get would be Gentry. But it's like, well, then what about her grandmother? Her grandmother's still alive and well, so it's like maybe because she's older, and her just maybe like it might be a generational thing. Like once it gets further and further down the generational line, the power's more power. Who knows, like why it specifically had to be Gentry. But like I said, maybe it could have been like her mom or something that was their initial target, but maybe she died and her powers are no longer something he could get because she died or whatever. So there's a lot there. Obviously, Gentry's trying her best to keep it all control and under control, but even she's becoming a little overwhelmed by all this, because it's like in just one, like you thought you kind of left a lot of this behind. You always wanted just to have a normal life, and for 8 years you did, and then it's just kind of like, yeah, just everything came flipped upside down, and now it's like this is all, you're kind of going from 0 to 60, and like all this is getting thrown at you. You're finding out about this stuff that you were only like tangentially aware of, and now you're kind of deep diving into it. Because she had talked to, Gugu about like, right, like how is it just like an everyday Tuesday to you? Because for her, it's like, this is my normal life. I've grown up and I've known this. But I think it's also like, right, her grandmother wanted her to have as much of a normal life, especially knowing the trauma associated with what happened 8 years ago. And so she wanted her to have a normal life. Like even there while they're kind of training and Gentry's activating her powers around the weapons. Because like they're supposed to be like, it was like, oh, I don't remember what those weapons are called. Are chakras? I believe that's what they are. Because I was like, I used to know the name for those type of weapons, but I believe chakras are the name of those weapons, but I could be mistaken. Maybe like the different designs, like, like the difference between like a katana and a tachi. Maybe it's something like that. So maybe it's something tangentially connected to chakras, or maybe they still would be considered chakras. I don't know. Either way, like they're like wind, even though one's called wind and the other one's called fire, it's supposed to be just fire supposed to come from them. So I wonder, is it supposed to symbolize like wind powering up fire? Maybe that's what that's supposed to be. But Gentry needs to like fuse her power into him to activate him, and her grandmother tries to use them, but like the charge doesn't stay long, so she has to use it over and over again to charge them up. But her grandmother saw like how Gentry saw, like she once again knows the deep-rooted trauma, so it's like, okay, let's go take a break and then go get something to eat. And eventually she saw that Ed ended up escaping, and she went after him, trying not to let Gentry get. It's like, right, let me handle this. You get to enjoy some form of normalcy until we have to go beat Mr. Chang. Like until then, like I want you to enjoy this. Your birthday, you're getting a whole celebration at the restaurant. You also run into, I don't know if she had a crush on him back then, but it's like the childhood friend, now potential love interest situation with Michael. And yeah, they get to hang out, and you find out more about the spectacle of, once again, the tourist trap situation of that is the demon girl and the damage she caused. And it's sad too, because Michael has no idea he's bringing all this up in front of Gentry. I mean, obviously Gentry's probably concerned, like, what would Michael think if he knew that I was the demon girl that burned stuff down? Because he was like, whether she was a demon girl or a regular girl, it doesn't matter. It's like at the end of the day, this town was hurt because of her. He's like, my house got burned down. My family lost a lot of heirlooms that they brought here from Nigeria that can never be replaced. All of that guilt is just fueling more upon her trauma, and it's like, it's nice to kind of be able to kind of put that all aside and kind of enjoy her time with Michael as they reflect on the past and stuff. It's like, oh, like, did you move to Seoul because of the whole fire situation? And Gentry's like, yeah, you could say something like that. It's just once again, I wasn't expecting something like tragic and heartbreaking like that, because it's like, and I guess this is where we kind of get into what I was, it's probably going to be a part of her story, is the whole secret identity. Like while she's fighting like the good fight, she's going to be using her powers, like, because she has a transformed state. I saw that in the teaser, so I'm assuming like she'll use that as her disguise and try to live a normal life. She's going to be doing your classic superhero thing of living a double life, like a Danny Phantom type of situation, because I use that as reference of what it kind of gave me a vibe of. So But eventually those closest to her will find out the truth about it. I mean, I'm curious how much of a role any of her friends in Korea will have, considering, like, well, that's in Korea, we're here in like Texas in the US, so I'm curious how much crossover will they be. I mean, it's just going to be that torn between two worlds, the life that you kind of wanted to leave behind and the trauma associated versus the life you were building up for yourself that was normal and away from all this. To be fair, you were all the way in Seoul and Ed found his way to you, so there was no escaping this, because this all came about because your birthday is right around the corner. You're going to turn, because like the whole thing is supposed to go down at midnight tonight because she officially turned 16. Like I was bringing up before, like it's just, especially the dual side of like that trauma is that trauma, even like it left a mark on this town, but them being able to kind of commercialize it and make it into a tourist trap situation has also healed this town. So it's kind of like, oh, the thing that you did like caused harm to this town, and you're going to be constantly reminded of it because of that thing that you did accidentally, whatever the case may be. I don't think you did it intentionally, but that's not going to matter to people in this town. It's going to be this situation of like they had to use their pain to kind of like heal this town, your pain as a means of, so it's all kind of messy and sad, and you just know that it's all going to come to a head at some point during the season, probably during the later chunk of the season. But either way, when the time came, Gentry was too afraid to use her powers because everything Michael said just kept playing over and over and over again. And like she was already afraid that running into Michael and talking to him about this just like amplified that fear even more. And she didn't want it. She couldn't activate her powers, to use the chakras, because like, what if my powers go out of control? What if I kill you, Gugu? What if I end up, burning this place down? And Mr. Chang shows up, and he, Gugu gave it the best she could. Very spry for her age, doing her thing, pulling out every tool in her belt, and even besides not having the tools, just very like acrobatic and just like, oh, she's a spry old lady, so. But nothing is good enough to work, especially because he ended up destroying the chakra. So it's like, well, that's, even if they could work, it's kind of a moot point now because they're gone. I was scared at every moment. I was like, there's no way they're going to do something like kill her grandmother, right? And lo and behold, they did. I was like, that's dark. I was like, that's depressing. It's like, right, we just got introduced to her, and especially knowing she's the only family, because we don't know if there's any extended family for Gentry, and maybe that'll come up like, oh, do you have any uncles or aunts that might play a role, or cousins that might pop up later in the story? Like, I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. It's like, what do you do? Especially with everything that's going on. I'm like, how do you report your grandmother's dead body? Because people are going to know it's like, wow, it looks like she got stabbed. I'm like, how do you have to cover that up, and how do you handle that? I mean, luckily her grandmother's around as a spirit, so that is a whole thing too, because you're like, well, my mind immediately goes like, either she's eventually I'm assuming she's going to stick around. Like, we aren't done with Gugu, that Gugu's going to be around. She's just going to be in ghost form. But it's still that thing. And even that moment where like, Gentry's overwhelmed with everything, and her grandmother tries to like comfort her by touching her face, like she did earlier in the episode, but now she can't even physically touch her. It's just like, Jesus. It's like, I wasn't expecting things to get this heavy and dark just in the first episode. That was a surprise. But either way, Gentry like ended up fighting off Mr. Chang and kind of burning him a little bit. Didn't kill him, but I guess like, I don't know if it's a combination of her and Mr. Chang trying to get away, but it kind of seems like she kind of tore open a dimensional rift to like maybe the demon world or whatever. So that's wide open, and that's probably going to lead to all the stuff. I mean, they've probably been sneaking into this world easily, but maybe it's a situation. They've been probably like sneaking into this world from time to time, but now it's like a giant portal is open because of that. So it's going to be another thing of Gentry being like, this is kind of my fault, even though it wasn't. It's just like everything spiraled out of control. So I think Ed's going to be sticking around too. I think he's going to be probably filling the pseudo sidekick role. It's interesting too, because obviously he was going to go back to Mr. Chang with the chakras to be like, yo, I got these. Hopefully you don't torture me for failing to grab Gentry. And he had to come here and do it himself. So it's like, well, you probably won't be so welcome back after all that. So is he just going to be sticking around? And what, he might be kind of like, having watched Mob Psycho recently, is he going to probably play a Dimple role, if you're familiar with Mob Psycho, so I don't know if that's going to be the role he ends up playing in this series or not. But I avoided the like I said, I did not watch the full trailer, nor did I watch the this season on that they typically do after the first episode. So I don't know quite sure where the story is going to end up going, how this is all going to play out. But I'm really excited to ultimately see where it does go and see how this whole situation develops as we learn more about this world and Gentry and how she handles all this on her own. Like I said, like the aftermath of all this, like what do you do with your grandma's dead body? And like, that's going to be a whole thing. So I think she is going to like enroll in school here just because it's like, cool, I have to stick around while all this has to be dealt with. So all those questions, we'll see if we get answers for them going forward into the next episode and beyond. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.